Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and wow, after the wind last night and the cold this morning, I did not expect to see so many people here. So welcome in our warm hall. Welcome Zoomers. I presume we've got 6 already, 6 and counting, 8 and counting, 19. Oh, wow. Okay, so yes, first of all, thank you, Dr. Antje Burke, for following our invitation to do the presentation here tonight. We have all heard about the hyphen hype in Lüderitz. We all know that part of the Sperrgebiet has been opened up for tourism. And those, especially those of you sitting here today, are all worried a bit about the endemic species of that area. And who better to speak about it than Dr. Antje Burke, considering that she's been working in it for 30 years?
30 years.
30 years already. So thank you very much for taking the time today out of your busy schedule. And I think without further ado, please do tell us more about the species and their importance, as well as what to do and what not to do.
Okay, good. Thanks for the introduction. And yeah, welcome to everybody. Welcome also to the people who are remotely Zooming in. And I'm really very chuffed that so many people have come out in all this cold weather to listen to what I'm very worried about. This is why I'm standing here today. I want to share some of the amazing things of the Sperrgebiet with you. And yeah, I think it would be really good if other people can share my concerns as well. So I entitled this the plight of the Sperrgebiet endemics. Do they have a chance in the face of multiple threats? I think you've all heard there's a lot of development proposed and going on at the moment. And the plants are one of the things that we have to worry about. So maybe just quickly a recap for what is an endemic. This is, in essence, an animal or plant that is restricted to a particular area, and you can look at it in terms of endemics. You could have endemics in Africa, or in Namibia, or in this case here, the last one is an outline of the Sperrgebiet. So what happens is if you go down the line here, the ranges of those particular plants or animals are going to be smaller and smaller and smaller, depending on the size of the area. And obviously, the smaller the area where they occur, like Sperrgebiet, the larger are the risks that something could happen to these plants. So that's in essence what an endemic specifies. When we look at managing environmental threats to the area, we always look at the endemics because those are the ones that are most likely affected by developments. And yeah, why are they important? They, in essence, an indicator for diversity. There is usually, when you have endemics, you've also got a lot of other species around them. And that means diversity means that there is a lot more resilience in the vegetation types, the habitats, because the more things there are, the greater the chances are that some of them are adapted to whatever changes are happening in that area. And in the case of the Sperrgebiet, we have a lot of very unique adaptations that these endemics show. So I will tell you also why, what we consider are the important reasons why we have so many endemics there. And I'm talking about plants because that is my passion, but we must also remember that plants are indicators for a lot of other biodiversity as well. So usually where you have a lot of endemic plants, you've got endemic animals as well, and they're indicators for particular habitats that are very important in an area. So consider it also as showing you, okay, where we have plant endemics, we've also got insects, we've got reptiles, we've got whatever else that may be there. And I'm focusing on the Sperrgebiet because there's a lot of development happening at the moment. And it's something that, yeah, I don't know whether everybody is aware of, but it's the one park in Namibia that has the highest plant diversity and the highest number of endemics. There's nothing else in Namibia that can match the Sperrgebiet, the ÄKhaeb Sperrgebiet National Park in terms of endemism. And unfortunately, very few people have had the opportunity to see a lot of the diversity and the endemics that are there. I was fortunate enough to have been working there for a long time, but I hope that there will be opportunity for others to come in future as well. So in terms of numbers, there are 31 plant species that only occur within the boundaries of the Sperrgebiet. So that's quite a high number. And if you just look in comparison, the Namdeb Park has 2 or 3. If you go further north, Skeleton Coast, I don't think there's a single one. Etosha, I don't even know. Bobs, do you know whether there are endemics? No. So it's quite remarkable that this is all within the area here. Right, so these are just a question that you would be asking me. Why are there so many endemics? There's just a couple of examples. I will talk about the species a bit later as well, but you see it's a variety of things that are endemic to the area. The first thing is we have to look at the foundation, which is in essence the landforms, the topography, the different habitats that we find in the area. And when you look at the satellite image here, supposed to not use the, I'm walking out of the screen now, you can see that there is a whole lot of diversity here of different habitats. These red areas are dunes, then we've got mountain ranges here, we've got complexes of Inselbergs, we've got a whole area here with rocky outcrops. So all of this is interlinked. So we've got little patches of dunes, dune fields in one area, like here. Then we've got little patches here between the mountains, and all of that is contributing to having a high diversity in the area. High diversity of habitats also shows high diversity of plants and animals. And on top of that, we've got different climatic regimes that are affecting the biodiversity in the area. It's a transitional area between winter and summer rain. So that means it's raining now at the moment, for example, in a lot of the area down here. But the northern sections, the north and the eastern part also get summer rain. I've drawn in this broad sort of line here. It's not obviously a clear boundary. The summer rain sometimes comes into the area as well. The winter rain goes further north. I mean, this is just a rough approximation. But what it means is that we've got a whole lot of different animals and plants that are adapted either to winter or summer, and they are intermingling in the area here. So that's another important factor. But then that means we've got 3 different biomes, which is what we call sort of bigger units of vegetation types. The succulent Karoo, which is the winter rain area. We've got desert. You can see the dune field, the Namib dune field coming in there from the north. And then we've also got the Nama Karoo biome, which is southern Namibia, in essence, where we've got shrublands and so on and so forth. So all 3 of those and plants and animals from those 3 biomes are presented in the area. This would be typical succulent Karoo. You see, it's a succulent plant with fleshy leaves. And then another very important point, and this is why, to some extent, why we have this, a lot of these developments, is that we have a very constant and very strong wind regime, normally from the south, southwest, southeast, all year round. And it's quite extreme. It's one of the highest wind speeds measured in the world that we've got in some of these areas here. So there are special adaptations that plants have to show, and animals also, to be able to cope with this. This is just an example of one of the shrubs that is completely wind blasted. It's still alive here, but the wind is constantly blowing sand onto the stems, so you'd see a lot of these sort of gnarled plants, and they yeah, this is because of the wind. Just one little example of the interlinking of the habitat and the climate regime. I want to show you, this is one of the hotspots in the area called the Aurus Mountains. And we're looking here at a southwest facing slope, which is like, yeah, it's almost like a sort of half a horseshoe. And what happens here, this is a very unique habitat where the fog precipitates regularly. It's quite a long way, a distance from the coast, I think probably about 40, 50 kilometers, but we still get regular fog coming in here. And it just moves up here, and then these slopes are constantly getting additional moisture. So we have a very, very unique plant communities living right there at the Aurus Mountains. So this is just an example of the type of habitats that we're going to be looking at. There are similar ones throughout the area, but this is the most important hotspots in terms of diversity and endemism. And I will talk about that particular place a little bit more later as well. So just these are the main reasons I wanted to talk about. But these are the areas where we've got concentration of endemics. So it's a number of places, particularly along the coast here. We've got a lot of areas. You can see there, it's just I'm shown in more marked places, but it's in essence entire habitats. This is the one that I showed you just now, the Aurus Mountains, Klinghardt Mountains. So it's mostly the mountain areas that have a lot of endemics, but not necessarily. Some of the endemics also occur in a whole range of different habitats across the entire area, or and not necessarily at these particular hotspots. So these are the areas where there's a lot of them, but they are in essence everywhere if you look closely. What I wanted to, I wanted to introduce a few examples of endemics to you. I mean, I can't go through all the 31 species now, which I have written up as an ebook and called the Endemic Plants of the Sperrgebiet. It's available online to anybody who wants to. So I will just show you a few of the plants that are covered in the book, and to look at what are these endemics. It's in essence, it could be anything. Almost everything except for trees is represented here. So we've got bulbs, we've got so lilies in essence, we've got a lot of succulents, of course, but it can also be shrubs and stem succulents. So anything that we know, any type of plant from the desert is represented by these in the groups of endemics. So these are now some of the coastal endemics. So these are plants that occur in essence along the edge of the shoreline here, the edge of the Sperrgebiet, and there's quite a number of them. This one is related to parsley, what else? Caraway seed, whatever. It's in the Apiaceae, the carrot family. A little shrub with pretty fleshy leaves. Okay, then we've got another shrub also in coastal endemic, but this one occurs also right up north into the Namib Park, so it's not as strictly endemic to the Sperrgebiet. And this is a daisy shrub in essence. Then we've got another plant that grows in the coastal area, like around Borgenfels, one of the places that most of the visitors go to and can go to at the moment, a few concessions that are open. So this one is restricted to the coastal area as well. And I think a lot of you may know about lithops. There's also a species that's quite common in the area, but again, restricted to the coastal area. And yeah, and then we've got the window plant, which is a little bit more widespread, but in essence also around the coastal area, and along the Orange River. And this is yeah, is quite an interesting plant, similar to lithops. Also, most of the plant is underground. You only see the tips of the leaves now sticking out in essence. And then I want to talk about a few of the endemics which are very restricted. I was saying earlier on in introduction, there's about 11 of them that have got a very, very narrow range. Most of those are related to rocky habitats. This is a type of Hoodia. I think most of you are aware of Hoodia, which was, yeah, developed or at some point as an appetite repressant, but then synthesized. Yeah, I mean the compound was synthesized, and the cultivation didn't carry on with this. But this is a relative of the one that was harvested before. So that one only grows in one of the mountain ranges called the ÄKhaeb Mountains. So we don't see it anywhere else. Oops. Ah, here we go. Must I not use it or what? Because otherwise maybe I just do it on the computer. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's do it. Okay, and I also wanted to tell you a little bit about the status of these species. If you look at the icons up at the top there, it tells you whether the plant is occurring only in the Sperrgebiet. SP means only in that area. The green P is it's a protected species, and the red icon is for red data species. So this obviously ranks very high because it's an endemic, protected, and a red data species. So if we look at the next one, and all the ones that I show you now fall into that category. So they have a very limited range. Another one that only grows in the mountain areas, and two of these, it's a Conophytum species, or similar to lithops and what else did I show you? And the window plant. So this is also something very restricted. Another one with a little bit tiny, yeah, a bit of a larger range where it occurs, but this one is restricted to dolomite outcrops. So within that range, you also only find it in a very specific habitat. So again, a very restricted species, protected and classified as near threatened on the red lists because of this very limited range. Now, what else have we got? And again, back to the mountain areas, we've got some very interesting little Tylocodon species, dwarf succulents, that they are about 5 centimeters large. So this is something that grows underneath the cliffs, cracks in the mountain areas. And this one only in one particular area here, Klinghardt and higher up mountains, so very, very limited range. And these are also very sought after by collectors. This is really because it's like a miniature bonsai in a way. There's another species like that which is restricted to the Aurus Mountains, the hotspot, the area that I showed you before, where the fog precipitates on the southwest slopes. This is the only places where they grow along that mountain range and only on the southwest facing slopes. So they have got a very limited range even within the mountain there. Again, about 5 to 10 centimeters high. And as you can see, looks like a funny little bonsai thing. So this is again something that people are really going to be looking for for their succulent collections. And then there's another one that some of you here have heard already many times before, what we call the desert parsley now. It's got a limited range in an area around an old drainage area called the älKhaeb. And this one, again, is also related to carrots, caraway, and all those sort of spice plants. It's a little shrub. I mean, if you look at the leaves, you can almost recognize parsley there. It's quite an interesting plant in a way that it's probably a remnant from different climate regime, almost like the Welwitschia of the south, because it only grows in that drainage area, and it flowers in the summer rainy season. So, and then it has no leaves at all. It's just sticks and flowers, and then the leaves come in the winter rainy season. So it's a very interesting plant, and it took us about 20 years to describe it because we could never find the flowers. We go in winter and collect and look at it again and again, and there is no only the leaves. But this is very unusual among these types of plants. You find that adaptation often among lilies, bulbs. They often produce leaves and then the flowers at a different time, but you don't find that often among shrubs. And this is one that that shows this sort of adaptation. But I go to the other side. And that's all. I mean, maybe before I go into the next one, should we do a quick break for questions, or do you want the questions all at the end, Miriam Root? At the end, okay, because I'm going into the next section now. I only wanted to introduce a few of the plants to you, but the second part of my talk is looking at what are the threats that these endemics face now. One of the things is climate change. I think you're all aware of this. There's a lot of there are a lot of changes coming our way. For the succulent karoo, a general drying is predicted, so a lot of the species there will be affected. And we don't know exactly which way they're going to respond. We also don't know what is going to happen to the fog patterns, which are very, very important for a lot of these species. So it is something I can't really suggest anything now what one can do about it, but when we look at the plants there, we always have to keep that in mind, that they're going to have more stress in future. That's in essence the main thing we can say about climate change. Then the second thing is mining, obviously, and that's a bit of a conundrum because we do have the Sperrgebiet. We do have an area here that has in essence been protected because of the diamond mining. I mean, you're all aware nobody can get in there. And this has now ended up producing one of the few areas of succulent karoo that has not been altered by livestock grazing. Now that's quite a remarkable. It's the biggest continuous area of succulent karoo that is unaltered. Livestock grazing has huge impacts on the succulent karoo. I think you're all aware, those of you who've been to Richtersveld and further south to the parks and on the South African side, if there are some It says, it gives me a red button. Okay, new battery. I've been talking too much. Probably. You know how to change this quickly, yeah. Here we are, back again. Sorry for the quick break. All right, so mining had major impacts in the area, still has major impacts, but diamond mining is also responsible for a lot of the diversity that is still there. So this is quite an interesting one. Tourism, the tourism development plan, unfortunately, has also not always taken these biodiversity hotspots into account, and I'll give you an example of that. So that's a threat that we are all worried about. Renewable energy, which is, of course, environmentally friendly, and we all want to support it, but we must also consider the impacts that are going along with renewable energy. So they're not always environmentally friendly. I would also want to give you one example there. And then we've got now a huge big development, the green hydrogen projects that are proposed for the area and a lot of associated infrastructure. So this is a massive development which will affect a number of these range restricted species. And, yeah, I must do it here and not use the thingy. The secondary effects related to these developments is that we're most likely going to end up with a lot of plant poaching. It's very serious. I don't know whether you have been following the news, but there is always daily something from the South African side of populations of conophytum, tylogodons, lithops, whatever, that's been taken out by big syndicates. We're talking tens of thousands of plants that are being ripped out of the wild and then sold on Asian markets mainly. And that is one of the biggest threats I feel that we're facing with all these developments, because it's going to be really, really difficult to keep control of people there moving through the area. So I said I want to give you examples of the threats. The one is the tourism point at the Aarhus Saddle, and this is the place that I showed you where we've got the southwestern facing slopes with the fog coming up and a very unique, very special habitat. And I see Ruth pointed that out to me. The trip that the Scientific Society is going to do to the area also goes to the Aarhus Saddle viewpoint, and the concessionaire claims that I developed the trail. I did not. I mean, this is now I'll tell you why, because this is the hotspot in the Sperrgebiet, the biodiversity hotspot. This is an absolutely incredible area that we haven't seen anywhere else here. There is just at that little saddle, and we're talking an area from here to where ÄKhaeb sits in essence, I'm sorry, and we've got about 200 plant species right there in this corridor. There is a lot of crassula, conophytum, and other collectors items. So crassula are also small dwarf succulents like those tylogodons that I showed you. So a lot of things that people are going to be keen on. There's this one plant that's endemic, that Tylogodon aureus that I showed you to the mountain range. Another 44 protected species and quite a few unusual plants, even including an orchid in the desert. So this is the dwarf succulents, bulbs. It's really an amazing spot. And yeah, this is what it looks like after a number of dry years. So it doesn't really look anything remarkable when you see it in the dry season. But yeah, it changes obviously when we've got rain and when the plants are green again, then it looks quite different. What happens here now is there is a trail that was marked by the Ministry of Environment and Tourism. They set the trail out initially. And it goes right past the saddle area where we have this concentration of all these unique plants. And people, when they get to the edge, it's in essence a wonderful viewpoint down to the ÄKhaeb, the meteorite crater. So everybody goes there and wants to take pictures. Then everybody steps off the trail and onto the succulents, to take the best angle, and particularly here at these areas where there is a view of the ÄKhaeb with what we call Africa rock. Everybody wants a picture there, and obviously goes around and then unwittingly trampling on all the succulents. So unfortunately, that is one of the tourism concessions that's happening at the moment. And when we looked at the tourism development plan, my colleagues from the National Botanical Research Institute, myself, and also with MET, we've discussed at the time that there should be a walkway, a raised walkway that people can then, and with sort of boundaries along, so that people will stay on the walkway near that Africa rock. There was supposed to be a platform so that people can go and take the pictures from whatever angle. We also wanted to have cameras up right at the ridge here, so that people who come and want to steal the plants are aware that somebody is watching. None of that happens. So the tours are going through regularly. The trail is looking even worse now than it does there. You can hardly, in the front part here, where we have all these concentrations of succulents, you can't even see the trail anymore. So that means people are just walking all over. And I think we're going to be losing this. In a couple of years, it's going to be gone. And the unfortunate part is that most of the people just go there for the viewpoints. They're not even aware of the amazing diversity they've got around them. So yeah, this is one of the examples we have to look at. And then I also want to talk about, in essence, a fairly positive development. Namdeb is now also looking at renewable energy, and they're developing solar farms, wind farms. And one of the wind farms, they put initially very close to a lichen field, which, yeah, is not the best thing to do. And it's near a rocky outcrop, the only rocky outcrop in that entire area, with a lot of different plants, protected plants and endemics, etc. But now, luckily, they are moving it. I mean, I'm glad to hear, I was speaking to Colleen Mannheimer, who had done some surveys there. They are moving it further away, but they're missing one of the most important points here. We've got a huge, tremendous disturbed area 2 kilometers away from where they want to put the wind farm. And that was not even considered. So I think it's a pity that Namdeb is using a unique opportunity here to show what sustainable development could do, because they're going, instead of putting it somewhere in these mined out areas, they're putting it into pristine areas, and the damage in the process of putting up structures for renewable energy, they obviously affecting the biodiversity there. And and I would say it is completely unnecessary. So the reason, yes, I also must talk about the reason why this happened, is because the bird and the bat people said that within 4 kilometers of the coast, there can't be any wind turbines. Okay. So, and everything, all the mining happened within those 4 kilometers. Right. So the question now is, what is more important? to keep a general a buffer open that may or may not be used by birds, and then go into completely undisturbed area and damage the biodiversity there, or shouldn't one have rather have a bit more of a closer look and see where are the actual bird hotspots within that 4-kilometer corridor and avoid those, and not just categorically say no wind farms, that area. That means there can never be any wind energy generation in the mined out areas, full stop, if we follow that. So that was unfortunately my colleagues. Right, and then I've also mentioned the green hydrogen developments that are proposed here. One that's going ahead now is the Hyphen project, which is in the northern part of the park, 2 concessions here. And I must say that the Hyphen people have, as much as possible, tried to avoid very sensitive areas, which are these dark green areas. So these outlines here, the purple and dark red, show the general development areas. There's also another area that is avoided, that spot here, which is a spring, the ÄKhaeb spring. There's a lot of wildlife movement right there. So at the moment on the plans is trying to avoid those areas. But we have got, despite this, we have one big problem. The desert parsley I talked about earlier on just overlaps almost completely with those 2 concessions and only goes a tiny bit outside of the concession area. So, and that plant grows on koppies, on the plains, in isolated populations across that range. So there's a huge big risk now, and that means also inside those development areas that Hyphen has quite rightly put there, because it's the least sensitive of the area as such. Not the least, but in the wind area, that would be the least sensitive. Yeah, these are the yellow areas are the least sensitive. But yeah, we're now sitting with this problem that plant grows right in that area where the developments are proposed. So that's that would have been that's the first step of the development. But even more concerning is obviously what's on the card is to divide the area up into more concessions, and everything will in essence then be used for green hydrogen development. The Hyphen project as such are developing the service infrastructure, already keeping the future developments in mind. So this is part of the agreement as far as I understand. So that means these things are most likely also going to go ahead at some point, and that means the entire area will be developed. Right. So I'm coming to the end of my talk here. I think we can all agree that this is obviously, it's an arid area, and there is a lot of special habitats in here which are unique, and that makes the area fairly fragile. So it's something that one has to look out for. A lot of those habitats and the vegetation in those habitats is not restorable. You can't restore outcrops, you can't restore lichen fields and things like that. So these would be lost completely if they are disturbed. And the diamond mining is responsible for having that restricted area. And luckily, their mining took place in the beach areas, which are coastal hummocks and sandplain areas that are restorable to some extent. In fact, they are restoring themselves because of all the sand movement, the seeds and the fog regularly coming across there. So at least we see some recovery happening there to some extent. No? It will never go back to what it was before, but it's not completely dead area. It's different along the Orange River, where there's also diamond mining. And Namdeb had a similar problem there, like we're now sitting with the Hyphen project with this desert parsley. There also was a plant looking similar to this one, which was restricted to one of the gravel terraces that they wanted to mine. It's called Utadenteria albata, and the Namdeb people, their hairs are going up when they hear Utadenteria albata. But what happened here is they agreed to do restoration in a quite a large scale intensive restoration of that of those habitats, and the plant is being re-established on mined out areas, on backfilled areas, but the outcome is very uncertain. We don't know whether it's really going to work. It's something very difficult to try and recreate a natural habitat in the desert. So that's one of the problems. Yeah, this is just showing you one of the dumps where there was no restoration, nothing. This is just what happened naturally in the coastal area. So things are coming back, even shrubs like these that we consider the sort of climax, the species that are showing that this is already quite well-developed vegetation. So it happens there, but it won't happen along the Orange River, and it won't happen in a lot of the inland areas. So if we look at all this, do the endemics have a chance with all these developments that are proposed? And yeah, I would say that we need to just keep in mind that all the developments, including tourism, can have quite tremendous effect, negative effect on our diversity here, and may even lead to the extinction of species in the extreme, where we have very narrow ranges and there's a development happening right there, overlapping with these ranges. That's where the red flags must go up, and where we have to see how we can avoid this and plan around it. And we've also got to keep in mind, if we're sacrificing irreplaceable biodiversity here, then we can't call this green developments, even if it's renewable energy, green hydrogen, whatever. I think it's very difficult to then say, justify calling it green. The same is true for tourism. If tourism is destroying important biodiversity areas, you can't call it ecotourism or sustainable tourism. So I think people need to keep that in mind. And I think they do have a chance, but they need a higher status. They need to be recognized as being something extremely important that needs to be integrated in all the planning. And the right measures need to be put in place to protect these plants. It's possible, but yeah, intensively doing planning to make sure that you avoid all the areas where you are going to be diminishing the ranges of species, where you're destroying some of these with a very narrow distribution. During the construction, particularly if we're thinking about huge developments like the green hydrogen project, where they're talking of 10,000s of workers coming into the area, it's frightening. And then obviously also operation, there will be maintenance, etc., and whatever. And the only thing that I can think of that needs to happen at a very, very large scale is intensive environmental management. Very intensive, which means we need a massive increase in Ministry of Environment and Forestry staff on the ground there. Our colleagues are so thinly stretched, they have absolutely no way of controlling people going in there and taking out things and making sure that all these environmental management plans and whatever are being followed, that we may impose on them. And not only increasing the staff, but also make sure that the staff gets adequate support. I think those of you who've been working with the Ministry of Environment and Tourism always know how disillusioned a lot of them are. They have no petrol, no vehicles, no this, no that. And they're expected to do a lot of hard work out in often very difficult conditions. So it's something that needs a huge improvement. And on the one hand, now for green hydrogen, they're busy training up engineers on all sorts of levels to help with solar, wind, whatever is required. But I think at the same level, one should also train up environmental managers, lots and lots of them, and field staff and conservation officers. That's absolutely critical. Otherwise, we are going to be losing that entire area and their endemics and with this. All right, this is the link to the book. So if anybody wants to have a look, it's available on the EIS and on the website. There's also a couple of posters along with the book, so anybody can download it and have another look at it. The poster development, book development was sponsored by the Namibia Chamber of Environment. So I also want to mention that and thank them for sponsorship. And yeah, I hope that the endemics will have a chance if more people are aware of it and help yeah, calling out, help the endemics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, all that information. While we go over to the questions, may I please ask everyone to fill out who hasn't filled out yet. Please note the cell phone number column on the right. That's for our new broadcasting group. It's not a normal WhatsApp group. It's a broadcasting group, which means that not everybody can send a joke and a missing dog or a whatever. You only receive the information that we send out, but you only receive it if you save our cell phone number on your cell phone. So you're welcome to put in your number there should you want to be added to that cell phone group or to that WhatsApp group. And then we will contact you to send us to our cell phone number so that you can just save it on your phone. Otherwise, the broadcast group does not work. Now, questions, please. Just remember, put them into the mic so that the Zoom people can also hear. So the broadcast group is just a quick reminder about our events. So it's usually going to be a picture with just the basic information. Okay, any question regarding the talk of Antje today?
Sorry, you seem to be surprised if I'm the first one to question. I noticed that you have a lot of picturesque illustrations from what was done by SLR in terms of the environmental and social impact assessment process. Were you involved, and how much was your influence in making sure that you are giving these endemics a chance to survive after hyphen and their zoning of their infrastructure?
I'm part of the environmental team, yes.
Any other question?
Hi, Antje. You didn't mention endemics on the Lüderitz Peninsula, or not that I noticed. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. But there's going to be a lot of development on the Lüderitz Peninsula, and is that a zone of particular sensitivity?
Absolutely, yes. I didn't specifically talk about Lüderitz Peninsula, but you're right, John, that is something that I should have maybe also highlighted, like ours. It's almost the same in that terms. And the peninsula is a lot of development happening there, and because not only because of the green hydrogen project, but because Namport is now also jumping on the bandwagon there, and they want their big port development, which has been on the cards for years, also now linked to this. So that means a lot more area is required than what hyphen needs now. I mean, so the Lüderitz Peninsula is another worry. Yes, absolutely.
Any other question?
And here, all these plants that are poached, do they have any chance of survival once they left the country, once they,
Survival,
in a sense of, I mean, they're getting sold and to collectors. Can they survive in other environments?
some of them can, yes. But they're lost obviously from
To
the
us,
wild
yeah.
habitat. No?
Mm.
But not everything is poached for succulent collecting. It's also for medicinal purposes, etc. So those plants obviously are going to be demolished now. They wouldn't be.
And any of these plants that are in very hypersensitive areas, can they be replanted or saved or secured, or?
You're talking about the narrow endemics that I was talking about. Very, very difficult. Because they grow, most of them grow in rocky habitats. So transplanting in rocky habitats is very, very difficult now. I mean, the one thing where transplanting works quite well is in the sandy areas where you can easily dig up plants, and particularly also succulents. We had good successes with a lot of that, but it also means there has to be quite intensive follow-up, it's years and years and years of work doing that and keeping on it. Simply just transplanting and hoping it survives. The survival rates are pretty low for most of the species. But this is one of the management actions we'd be looking at, but it will only be possible in some habitats.
I see a lot of grim faces.
You mentioned that restriction of the 4-kilometer buffer zone from the coast. And is there any sort of planning process going on to weigh up the different sensitivities to understand where you might be able to reach a compromise, where that 4-kilometer zone doesn't have to be as wide? I mean, to try and make use of those brownfield zones that you mentioned. I know there's been talk about a strategic environmental assessment of all of this renewable energy development, but I'm not aware that anything is actually moving in that direction. So one would hope that that kind of reconciliation of the different sensitivities would happen. Do you know of anything that's being moved in that direction?
No. I also see people shaking heads. It's been talked about a lot. It's even been brought up initially by the Hyphen project, but it's not really the developer's responsibility. This is something that needs to go a step higher. No? It's a strategic assessment that is needed for the Sperrgebiet. Initially, we said even for the entire green hydrogen, that is this the right place to put a huge scale development like this? That question was never asked. That should have happened long before the concessions were awarded or even drawn up. That has never happened. Now it's come now one has to look at what happens within the Sperrgebiet with all these plans for development. So that would be another strategic assessment that should happen. And you're quite right, John. This is exactly where this looking at the different sensitivities should be done. That 4-kilometer buffer thing was just for one particular project where it was applied. There are wind farms at Lüderitz. They are within the 4-kilometer buffer. So, that wasn't considered in that project, for example. There are other plans for wind farms near Elizabeth Bay, right south of Lüderitz, all near the coastal area. So there was nothing about 4 kilometers buffer. There can't be any wind turbine development. But that needs to happen, yes. But yeah, I think that there may need to be a lot of pressure from people like you to say what is happening, why is it not happening?
Yeah, I think we are fighting here against powers that we can't fight. I mean, a cute little plant is just not enough for these billions of US dollars that are coming with a green hydrogen project, I think. And this is not, as you already mentioned, it's not the final stage. No, it will go further. Are there any plans, or is it realistic, the thought of finding an area where one could, which one could turn into a botanical garden or something like that, to at least keep the species in a sort of semi-wildlife area, sort of thing?
Do you mean within the area or outside of the area?
Botanical, which I'm talking about an area in that area, natural habitats, which could be sort of excluded from any development, tourism and mining, where one could at least have a few of each, or of as many as possible species.
I'm going to have
for future generations.
I need to go back to one of the maps here to show you where is the map in the beginning. No, it's not actually. Oh, okay. Now I need to go to the green hydrogen map. I didn't put the whole map. The whole park has been zoned for different types of developments, and the area that should not have been touched at all, according to the zoning. Yeah, this shows the backdrop of the park zoning that the green hydrogen project followed quite strictly in terms of where the development area is. All these dark green areas, according to the park management plan, should have no development whatsoever. So that means that would be your natural habitat that's been preserved in a way. And there's a lot of those areas. That whole mountain range here, this is the northern part of that Aras mountain, which I talked about. That is, according to the park management plan, no development. But this is where the tourism hotspot is. So unfortunately,
you also showed a slide later on where it's not only these concession areas there, but also for future developments, which, let's be honest, will come if this is successful, which are sort of looking like those, just copy pasted further down.
You're talking about these further developments. Yeah. So that means when these concessions are awarded, if the people are environmentally want to develop environmentally friendly, they're going to have to go through the same exercise, look at the park management, the zoning that has been done beforehand, incorporate that zoning into their plans where they put the infrastructure, etc. That is what would have to happen. And those particular areas would then be like your natural garden in a way that is then going to be undisturbed. But the problem is that not even the tourism development plan was taking that into account. So we've got a conflict here of what government decided is going to be the zoning and what is then put in practice, unfortunately. Yeah, so there have been, I mean, if you're concerned about just keeping species, there is a drive to try and get enough seeds in seed banks so that at least the species are preserved, what we call ex situ, so out of their natural habitat. But this is just, yeah, I mean, it's just the last resort in essence to try and preserve things now. And that wouldn't be a way to go if you want a development happening. There have also been quite a number of attempts to do greenhouses to grow some of these plants and sell them to people so that they don't come in and collect them, go into the areas, collect them. But I don't know of a single one that's been successful. I've all got an house, for example, in Warmbad. They've all got funding from different conservation organizations, but it's never been really taking off. You need people who are passionate about growing plants and have green fingers. So this is the sort of basic essence, that to have a project like that developing into a successful nursery. So they need to be in Washpina. They also tried it. So yeah, it's in Monument. There's now some people who manage to do that. So, but it's small scale, and it's not going to help us save these important species. Well, it will help, but it's not enough. Yeah.
Thank you. When you have a decision taken to put up a pathway, and then it doesn't happen, but you know why? We're in the tourism hotspot where you wanted to have one of those boardwalks that was above. Why didn't it happen? Why does a decision like that get taken and is not implemented?
No money, apparently.
And the other thing with environmental impact studies, I've been part of things like this before, and it goes to the highest level and they all say that they are absolutely with it, and then it still happens. You know, why is that? You know, there's no passion for preserving what we have.
Yeah, I can't answer. Well, I mean, the one thing, I mean, in this particular instance, I've obviously been talking to my colleagues, asking about it, and yeah, it's not. There's no money finished. So they shrug their shoulders. So, well, there is a lot to worry about, but yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that this is how it happens. But this is why I was also stressing the point that there needs to be a lot more support to the ministry. No, for things like that. I mean, the money, they got a lot of infrastructure through the Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, KfW project, that's been sponsoring a lot of the park development all over the country, a lot of money also into the Sperrgebiet. But that project came to an end, and when this was decided, then there was no more money for things, additional things like that. No, there aren't even toilets at the moment at this hotspot. I mean, you guys are going to see it. This is what the concessionaire is also complaining about, and rightly so, because he goes through there with groups of 20, 30 people. I don't know how many times a month. Where do they all go? No, so. We're going to lose. We will be losing that area. No? That's, I can't see that this is going to stay what it. Who? Me? I would. This was the first concession that was awarded. Yeah. So. So you better all join this trip here, which is going to the Aurus Saddle, so that you can see it before it's gone. Eh?
Hi, John Grobler, journalist. This is maybe not the right place to ask this question, but I was wondering if the hyphen plan is to develop ammonia, which is an essential ingredient for fertilizer. Why did they not site the plant at the Negev Dam, so they wouldn't have to worry about any of this, not to mention have to build a desalination plant?
Sorry, what does the
Why
question?
is this plant not being built at Negev instead of on the coast?
What plant? Sorry,
The hyphen ammonia.
the hyphen projects. Yeah. Can I give it over to the hyphen people? Marco, yes.
Hi. Hi. I'm Marco Refney from Hyphen, CEO of Hyphen. In short, the reason why this is an area identified by government for green hydrogen is the wind is what is the determining factor of producing green hydrogen. So you got to think of wind and sun as a resource, and effectively the wind in this area is what makes it unique. it's not the availability of water. So if you go to the Negev area, you don't have the wind resource to actually make hydrogen at a competitive price.
Any other question? I think, yeah, I think, thank you very much, Dr. Antje Burke, for all that you've told us tonight. As she said, we are, or we have organized a tour to specifically that area, also going to see those plants there, amongst others. The programs are here in the front, if you would like to see it. As for the information, as Dr. Burke said, do we have the PowerPoint presentation available for? Yes, so we do have the PowerPoint presentation. If you would like to take it home, can we also share the presentation on
the website,
on our website? So the presentation will be on YouTube for future referencing and for revisiting it. Yeah, and then let's try and preserve what we can preserve. I thank you very much. If you want to chat further with Antje, please do share a glass of wine. We don't have glühwein, unfortunately, tonight, but it's nice and warm in here. And then thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and then we'll see you again soon.
Okay.